All right, this is the installation video for the cut-in 3-inch fog edition for ARB bumpers. This one is specific to the 3rd Gen 4Runner and 1st Gen Tacoma. I don't have these kits available for anything else. If you're seeing this, this is a pre-production install, and you are going to be one of the first to actually take and install one of these kits. The first thing we're going to want to do, we'll hop back and forth between the trucks so you can actually see what you have to do, is you have to place this cutting template. Okay, now we're over at the truck. We're gonna line everything up. We're gonna test our cut template to see how this all fits. I'm gonna show you some placement tips and then how to mark and cut. You can see I've already cut this. I had a second fog light in here, or a different fog light in here before I decided to make this whole kit. That's why this all looks a little bit ugly. One thing you can't really see is that the crash support is really not that far down. It's only about that far over. So this space here isn't actually empty. You don't have a ton of room before you can't access the fasteners or anything anymore. So it's very important that you can see this weld seam that's right here on every bumper. You're gonna have to position so you're at very minimum a certain distance away from this. You have to remove the rubber bumpers that are here. I threw mine away. Production kits will later probably have blocks for these little holes and stuff just to kind of clean the bumper look up a bit. But this is gonna be kind of where the kit is at for the moment. So when you place the kit on, obviously you can see inside to the inside center line of the vehicle top. One thing I would note is that you can align this with the edge of the radius. So there's a radius here as it curves down, and exactly where it goes straight again is where this aligns to. Now it happens exactly the same thing here along the bottom. One thing you should pay attention to is that this is wider than the actual physical bezel that you're going to get and install. It's a little bit shorter, so you'll have a little bit of radius and this won't overhang. So you can fudge it a little bit towards this side, towards the outside of the vehicle. You do not want to move too far to the inside. Now you can see where my holes are drilled, and my holes are at the absolute minimum distance. This is actually a little closer than I would have done it if I were to do it all again. And that is exactly around 2¼ inches with this resting right on the center of that seam. I would recommend you be closer to 2½ inches if you can help it. That will give you enough room for the rest of the gadgetry in the back, but you can go probably up to 3 inches. But 3 inches, you can't go any more outboard than that. The reason being is that it starts getting close to the turn signal. And if you want to reuse the bumper, just consider this, that you're kind of on your own as far as trimming and the rest goes. Have a look with the bumper on. Maybe this makes more sense at 3 inches for you. The kit should relatively fit the same. But again, you're in pre-production territory still if you're seeing this. So a little bit of massaging may be on you to figure out. Mine is cut right at 2¼ 2½ is kind of where I would stick it. But you do have a little bit more room. The bumper usually comes to kind of here-ish, but you know, if you had to measure it up, you might want to trim it so it kind of, you know, doesn't get interfered. But they're a bit of a pain to get on and off, so that's why I threw mine away. These holes on the sides, you use 1/4 inch. I do recommend you either stake to try and get them as centered as possible. It is very important that these remain aligned and at the same height as they are on this kit. So don't let the drill walk. I definitely recommend you punch or stake the inside of these to keep the drill bit dead straight. If you have to go a little larger on the hole, that is okay. I wouldn't go hugely large, but as long as the positions and centers are somewhat close. There's pilot holes and finishing holes, and you can see there's a groove cut all the way around just lightly in the face. This is a mock line to cut with your grinder, so you don't actually have to French in the rest of this stuff. This will save you a little bit of time if you just don't have the tools to do nice little grinds. But you have to note that there isn't a lot of room for error in the kit. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it works. What you have to do, you can match it up, use a 1/8 bit pilot hole, and you can mark and pilot these holes, and then you can use a finishing 3/8 bit to drill those out further, and those should make perfect corners. Those should make those filleted corners. I'll get a little closer here. Those should make these corners, so when you cut straight with your grinder, you end at the edge of that hole. That's the point. But if you misdrill here, you're going to be pretty tight. You might even see it a little bit. Won't be a big deal, but it is something that you may want to pay attention to. Just so you note, this is designed to fit over top. It is very close. There's room for a pencil mark, but these corners aren't exactly rounded. So if you cut exactly on these corners, if you're a little more confident and you just take it and grind a little bit, just round, you'll be able to fit this bezel with no problem. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take these little standoffs. This is basically the anchors. You're going to get some M6 nylock nuts, and we're just going to press them into the hex holes that are existing there. And it is a tight fit. It is a press fit. I actually have to use pliers to get them in, but you got to press all of them in. Okay, and you can see both of them have like this. The way that these install are with the little foot, and they're going to actually install on the inside. These retain the nuts, and this little cutout comes to the inside as well, because what happens is on the back side of this guy sits just like that. That little tab is going to rest in that space. Okay, so this sits like that, and this little guy is going to rest like here. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Same thing on this side. You're going to get a bolt very likely, because studs are hard for me to get, but that one is going to be kind of what you end up with, and this is going to retain the whole bezel on. It all goes with just one fastener to keep things a lot easier for you to make adjustments, because you have to take this off to adjust the height. Again, I suggest setting up the light on here first, at least loosely. It saves you having to run the bolt all the way down later. There's nothing wrong with doing this as a second operation. It is a little bit lighter and a little bit easier if you have a hard time kind of making everything go together nicely. Again, this is going to sit somewhat like that, right? So here's what we're going to do. Slip the whole light in from the back, and then we're going to place this guy on the other side. And I can usually just pinch it with one hand, and you're going to take your fastener here. Don't forget your Allen key. The holes. It is a good idea to check that your holes are aligned before you do this, because it's going to get very frustrating if you don't. And the whole thing will just sit like that now that it's there. Again, other side, just in this orientation, you can see the nuts on the other side. You're just going to slip it in over the slots. This one's easier to get in from the back. Another thing to pay attention to is now everything's loosely installed. You can move the light up and down. This is to help you kind of center it in the hole. And what I do is I paint mark everything. Now that I've set this up once, I paint mark it before I take it apart and put it back on again. I do this a lot, but it does save you from having to deal with guessing where the final position and height of everything is going to be. The plastic that those are embedded in, if you over squeeze it, you can deform it. It's called creep. You see how small the key I'm using right now. You don't need much. This is quite sturdily in there. Just snug it. That's why you have 4. Now when this goes to install, you'll see this catch. So you can see the kind of hook. It now just slides in on this side, and then the stud or bolt will just go through here. So slides in, and you've got pockets that hide the bolts. Slides in. That one's a little bit tight because of the stud. You won't have that problem if you have bolts. And you can see that's nice and aligned, and the light is centered. I'll take. And now you can see that that's nice and lined. That's because I marked everything, so I know where it goes already. But you can see that that's nice and aligned and centered. The bracket is very close to this support, so it does get quite tight. That's why being over another 1/4 of an inch is very handy. You can see that resting on the bumper there. The Baja Designs is typically a shorter light, so being a little bit higher isn't much of a problem. Way up there is the stud I need to stick the nut on. The reason I didn't make more fasteners is because it's kind of a pain in the butt to get your fingers in there and a tool. So thank you for joining me for the installation video for the cut in Beacon Plus bracket and bezel. This is still a pre-production kit. We'll see what happens with it, whether or not I get enough adoption to make it a full run. I may just limit it to small runs, and it might just be a small seller, but it's an option for you guys who want to add a pocketed 3-inch, and you don't have to use the big 7 or 9-inch lights in the front, which can definitely reduce cooling with this bumper. So it's a good option.